The recruitment shock. The interview that changed everything. Lieutenant Marcus Webb adjusted his dress uniform and tried not to stare at the bizarre collection of alien species bustling through the Galactic Defense Corps recruitment station. 6 months ago, he'd been fighting insurgents in the Australian outback. Now he sat across from a purple-skinned alien with too many eyes, representing humanity's first attempt to join the galaxy's premier military organization. "Your combat experience is extensive," Recruiter Kix 291 said, his translator device struggling with obvious discomfort. The alien's 4 arms trembled slightly as he reviewed Marcus's file. "But we need clarification on your termination records." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "My what?" "Confirmed enemy eliminations. For proper classification and compensation tier assignment." The alien's translator emitted what sounded like nervous static. "Standard protocol requires exact numbers for the past 5 standard years." "Look, I've been deployed to 12 different conflict zones," Marcus said, leaning back in his chair. "Afghanistan, Syria, the Detroit Rebellion, the Amazon corporate wars. I don't keep a running count of that." Kix 291's largest eye twitched. "No documentation? No verification system? How do you determine promotion eligibility?" Marcus almost laughed. "We base promotions on leadership, tactical knowledge, and mission success. Not on body counts. But the efficiency metrics." "Are you asking me to guess?" Marcus interrupted. The alien nodded eagerly. Marcus sighed and began calculating in his head. Between direct action missions, urban warfare, and counterinsurgency operations. Maybe 400? Could be more. Like I said, we don't keep score. The silence that followed was so complete that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. Kix 291's skin had shifted from purple to a sickly yellow-green, and all 4 of his eyes were now focused directly on Marcus. "The galactic standard." 400, the alien whispered. "Give or take," Marcus shrugged. "That's just personal engagements, not counting artillery calls or drone strikes I've directed." Kix 291's translator began emitting rapid clicking sounds. I need to consult with my superiors. Please remain here." As the alien stumbled from the room, Marcus noticed he'd left his data pad behind. Curious, he picked it up and activated the screen. A list appeared: Top Combat Personnel, Galactic Defense Corps. Supreme Commander Thala, 9, 23 lifetime eliminations. Fleet Admiral Gorvok, 18 lifetime eliminations. General Prextier, 31 lifetime eliminations. Commander Yulian, 5, 15 lifetime eliminations. Marcus scrolled through the list. The highest number he found was 47, belonging to someone called Battlemaster Kron, who apparently held the galactic record for individual combat effectiveness. "Jesus," Marcus muttered. "No wonder they're losing the war." The Emergency Council. 20 minutes later, Kix 291 returned with 3 other aliens, all looking like they'd seen a ghost. Behind them shuffled an elderly human woman in a crisp business suit. "Lieutenant Webb," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Dr. Patricia Huang, Earth's liaison to the Galactic Defense Corps. We need to talk." The aliens huddled together, whispering in their native languages while their translators buzzed frantically. Dr. Huang sat down across from Marcus. "How did your interview go?" she asked. "Weird. They're obsessed with kill counts." Dr. Huang nodded grimly. "That's what we were afraid of. Marcus, what you need to understand is that most species in the galaxy are what we might call civilized to an extreme degree. They've been at peace for centuries before joining the galactic community. So they're not warriors? They're bureaucrats with weapons." Dr. Huang glanced at the still whispering aliens. "The Galactic Defense Corps has been fighting a defensive war against the Krell Empire for 30 years. They've lost over 200 colony worlds because they treat warfare like an accounting problem. Marcus began to understand. And now they've discovered humans. Exactly. A species that's been fighting wars for its entire history. Marcus, you're the modest 400 eliminations. That makes you approximately 17 times more lethal than their current Supreme Commander. The revelation. Kix 291 finally approached their table, his forearms clasped behind his back in what appeared to be a formal posture. Lieutenant Webb, he began, his translator working overtime to process his nervous speech patterns. After consulting with the High Command, we have questions about human military doctrine. Such as, your file mentions something called total war. Can you explain this concept? Marcus looked at Dr. Huang, who nodded encouragingly. Total war means using every resource available to achieve complete victory. Military and civilian industry, economic warfare, psychological operations, strategic bombing, whatever it takes to force the enemy to surrender unconditionally. The alien skin went completely white. You deliberately target non-combatants? We target the enemy's ability to fight, Marcus corrected. That includes their factories, supply lines, communication networks, and sometimes their will to resist. But that's... Kix 291 seemed to struggle for words. The Galactic Convention of Warfare specifically prohibits. The Galactic Convention was written by species that have never faced an existential threat, Dr. Huang interrupted gently. Humans developed these tactics because we had to. We've been fighting for survival since we discovered fire. Kix 291 exchanged glances with his colleagues. Lieutenant Webb, would you be willing to demonstrate these techniques against the Krell? Marcus grinned. When do we start? The Pacification Protocol, when humans rewrote galactic warfare. Part 2, the Strategy Session. The War Room Revelation. General Harrison Blake stood at the center of the Galactic High Command's war room, surrounded by floating holographic displays showing the current state of the 30-year war against the Krell Empire. The assembled alien commanders watched him with a mixture of fascination and horror, their various appendages twitching nervously as he analyzed their tactical situation. This is your standard battle formation? Harrison asked, gesturing at a three-dimensional display showing neat rows of ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Supreme Commander Thala, 9, a tall, crystalline being that communicated through color changes in his translucent body, shifted to a cautious amber hue. The hexagonal supremacy formation has been proven effective through computer simulations. It maximizes defensive coverage while maintaining communication efficiency. Harrison scratched his grizzled chin. And how's that working out for you? The assembled commanders exchanged uncomfortable glances. Fleet Admiral Gorvok, a slug-like creature with multiple eye stalks, spoke up. We have achieved a 23.7% success rate in major engagements over the past decade. 23%, Harrison repeated slowly. Gentlemen, ladies, and, whatever you are, he nodded toward a gaseous being hovering in a containment field. On Earth, we'd call that a complete disaster. Human military philosophy. Perhaps you could share human tactical doctrine, asked Commander Yulian, 5, an insectoid being whose antennae quivered with nervous energy. Harrison activated his personal data pad, projecting human military history onto the room's main display. Rule number 1, adaptability. No plan survives contact with the enemy. Rule number 2, overwhelming force at the decisive point. Rule number 3, the enemy gets a vote. The alien stared at the images of human warfare throughout history. Battlefields littered with destroyed equipment, soldiers advancing through rubble, massive explosions tearing through enemy positions. You seem to cause extensive collateral damage, observed Dr. Zenth Prime, a medical officer whose tentacles writhed in distress. We cause whatever damage is necessary to win, Harrison replied matter-of-factly. War isn't a chess game with rules. It's controlled chaos, and the side that controls it best usually wins. Supreme Commander Thala IX's body flickered to a disturbed red. But the Galactic Convention of Warfare clearly states. The convention was written by species that have never fought a real war, Harrison interrupted. You've been treating this conflict like a sporting event. The Krell are treating it like extermination. The Krell problem. Harrison manipulated the holographic display, showing the current front lines. Look at this. You've lost 200 colonies in 30 years. The Krell advance, you fall back in good order, establish new defensive positions, and wait for them to break your formations with superior numbers. What would humans do differently? Asked Fleet Admiral Gorvok. Harrison's smile was predatory. We'd stop playing defense. Show me your intelligence on Krell logistics. The display shifted to show supply lines, manufacturing centers, and command structures deep in Krell territory. Harrison studied the data for several minutes while the alien commanders waited nervously. Here's what we're going to do, he announced. We're going to hit their supply depot at Nexus 7, their primary shipyard at Krell Prime, and their communications hub at Sector 12. Simultaneously. The room erupted in concerned chatter. Supreme Commander Thala IX flashed a bright orange. Impossible. Those targets are hundreds of light-years behind enemy lines. Exactly. They won't expect it. Harrison highlighted the targets on the display. While they're scrambling to respond to attacks on their infrastructure, we hit their forward positions with everything we've got. Classic hammer and anvil. The moral dilemma. Dr. Zenth Prime's tentacles writhed more frantically. General Blake, those facilities contain civilian populations. Krell non-combatants. Harrison's expression hardened. Doctor, how many civilians have the Krell killed in the past 30 years? Approximately 2.3 billion across all occupied worlds, the medical officer replied quietly. And how many of your precision strikes have stopped them? Silence. War is hell, Harrison continued. But sometimes you have to go through hell to reach the other side. We're not targeting civilians for the sake of killing them. We're targeting their ability to wage war. Commander Yulian V's antennae drooped. This is so different from our traditional approaches. Your traditional approaches have been failing for 3 decades, Harrison pointed out. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over while expecting different results. The test of resolve. Supreme Commander Thala IX cycled through several colors before settling on a deep purple. General Blake, what you're proposing, it would fundamentally change the nature of warfare in our galaxy. Good, Harrison replied. Because the current nature of warfare in your galaxy is losing. The Krell understand that war is about breaking the enemy's will to fight. They've been doing it systematically, world by world, while you've been playing by rules they never agreed to follow. Fleet Admiral Gorvok raised one of his eye stalks. What if we refuse to adopt these tactics? Harrison shrugged. Then in 5 years, maybe 10, the Krell will be at your core worlds. They'll kill your families, enslave your children, and erase your cultures from history. But hey, at least you'll have maintained your moral superiority. The harsh words hung in the air like a physical presence. Several commanders shifted uncomfortably, their various forms of body language expressing deep unease. However, Harrison continued, his voice softening slightly, if you're willing to fight like your civilization depends on it, because it does, then we have a chance. Humans have been fighting extinction-level conflicts for millennia. We've learned that survival sometimes requires terrible choices. The decision. Supreme Commander Thala IX pulsed through a rainbow of colors before finally settling on a determined goal. General Blake, if we implement your strategies, how long before we see results? 6 months, Harrison said without hesitation. Give me 6 months with human tactics and combined fleet operations, and I'll push the Krell back to their pre-war borders. And if you're wrong? Harrison's smile was grim. Then you'll be exactly where you are now, except you'll have tried everything instead of just hoping the enemy decides to play fair. Dr. Zenth Prime's tentacles stilled. The moral implications are secondary to survival, Harrison finished. Doctor, in human history, we've learned that sometimes the only way to save civilization is to temporarily abandon civility. The question isn't whether you can afford to adopt human tactics. The question is whether you can afford not to. The war room fell silent except for the soft hum of the holographic displays. Finally, Supreme Commander Thala 9 flashed a brilliant white. General Blake, you have our authorization. May the cosmos have mercy on us all. The first mission. The battlefield introduction. Sergeant Riley Torres crouched behind a shattered wall on the war-torn surface of Cygnus 4, watching his mixed squad of human and alien soldiers prepare for their first joint operation. The planet had been under Krell siege for 8 months, and the Galactic Defense Corps had been fighting a losing battle of attrition that perfectly exemplified everything wrong with their military doctrine. Sergeant Torres, came the translated voice of Lieutenant Vex 9, a four-armed reptilian officer who commanded the alien half of their combined unit. My troops are in position per the established tactical manual. We await your signal to begin the coordinated advance. Riley peered through his scope at the Krell defensive positions 2 kilometers away. Neat rows of bunkers, perfectly spaced, with clear fields of fire and overlapping coverage. Textbook defensive strategy, if you were fighting a textbook war. Lieutenant, tell your people to stay put for now, Riley said, keying his comm unit. Jenkins, Ramirez, you see that communications tower? Copy, Sarge, came the reply from Private Jenkins, positioned on a ridge 800 meters to their left. Big ugly thing, lots of antennas. That's our real target. Mitchell, you got eyes on their supply depot? Affirm. Spotted 3 hover trucks moving ammunition. Looks like they're restocking for a big push. Riley grinned. While the aliens had been planning a frontal assault on the Krell's main defensive line, he'd spent the morning identifying what actually mattered: command, control, and logistics. The alien way versus the human way. Lieutenant Vex 9's confusion was evident even through his translator. Sergeant, the primary objective is the elimination of hostile forces in Grid Square 7 Alpha. Why are we discussing secondary infrastructure targets? Because, Lieutenant, killing their soldiers is just treating the symptom. We need to cure the disease. Riley highlighted the targets on his tactical display. Jenkins, you're going to put a rocket through that comm tower. Ramirez, you're going to disable those supply trucks. Mitchell, you're going to spot for me while I take out their command bunker. What about the frontal assault? Vex 9 asked, his 4 arms gesticulating in what appeared to be distress. What frontal assault? Riley replied. We're not charging into their guns like this is the Battle of Gettysburg. We're going to make them come to us. The alien officer's translator emitted concerned clicking sounds. This deviates significantly from approved tactics. The manual clearly states. The manual is wrong, Riley interrupted. Watch and learn, Lieutenant. Chaos and adaptation. Riley's plan unfolded with devastating efficiency. Jenkins's rocket obliterated the communications tower, instantly cutting off the Krell position from their higher command. Ramirez's precision shots disabled the supply vehicles, trapping the ammunition loaders in the open. Mitchell's spotting allowed Riley to put a series of high-explosive rounds directly through the armored command bunker's firing port. Within minutes, the supposedly impregnable Krell defensive position had devolved into chaos. Soldiers ran between bunkers trying to establish communication. Officers emerged from cover attempting to coordinate a response. Supply personnel abandoned their duties to seek shelter. Now we advance, Riley announced, rising from cover. But not where they expect us. Instead of the traditional frontal assault, Riley led his squad in a wide flanking maneuver that brought them to the Krell positions from the side. The enemy had oriented their defenses to face the expected direction of attack, leaving their flanks vulnerable. Sergeant Torres, Lieutenant Vex, 9 called over the comm, "My troops are requesting permission to provide covering fire from our original position." "Negative," Riley replied, diving behind a damaged hover tank. "I need them to move to grid square 6 Charlie and prepare to cut off the Krell retreat route." Retreat route? The alien officer's confusion was palpable. "We haven't even begun the main assault." "Lieutenant, the main assault is over. We won 5 minutes ago when we cut their communications and supply lines. Now we're just mopping up." The alien perspective. As Riley's squad systematically cleared the Krell positions, Lieutenant Vex, 9 watched through his scopes with growing amazement. The humans moved with a fluid adaptability that seemed to defy military logic. When they encountered heavy resistance, they didn't reinforce their attack, they found another way around. When faced with superior firepower, they didn't retreat, they eliminated the source of that firepower. Sergeant Torres, Vex, 9 called, "There's a heavily fortified position at grid square 8 Alpha. My tactical computer estimates it would require a full company to assault successfully." "Computer's wrong," Riley replied, studying the position through his scope. "Mitchell, you got any of those sticky bombs left?" "2, Sarge." "Good. See that drainage pipe running under their position? Think you can crawl through it?" Lieutenant Vex 9's translator nearly overloaded. "You're sending one soldier to attack a fortified position defended by 30 enemy combatants?" "I'm sending one soldier to plant explosives under their feet," Riley corrected. "Big difference. The human advantage." 20 minutes later, Mitchell's demolition charges turned the impregnable Krell fortress into a smoking crater. The surviving enemy soldiers, their morale shattered by the seemingly impossible attack, began surrendering in groups. "This is unprecedented," Lieutenant Vex, 9 observed, his 4 arms trembling with what appeared to be excitement. "We've taken a position that our best projections said would require 3 days and significant casualties." "Time and casualties are just resources," Riley replied, helping tend to a wounded alien soldier. "The trick is not to waste them on stupid objectives. We didn't need to kill every Krell soldier here. We just needed to make them ineffective." As the battlefield quieted, Riley's mixed squad had achieved something the Galactic Defense Corps hadn't managed in 8 months of fighting: they'd actually pushed the Krell back. More importantly, they'd done it with minimal casualties on their own side. Sergeant Torres, Lieutenant Vex, 9 said, approaching with obvious respect, "I would like to learn more about human tactical doctrine." Riley grinned, wiping dirt from his rifle. "First lesson, Lieutenant, the enemy doesn't care about your manual. Second lesson, adapt or die. Third lesson, always have a plan, but be ready to throw it away when the situation changes." The ripple effect. As reports of the successful operation reached Galactic High Command, the implications became clear. A single human NCO with a mixed squad had accomplished what entire battalions had failed to achieve. The key wasn't superior weapons or numbers, it was superior thinking. "Sergeant Torres," came a transmission from General Blake, "how many enemy combatants did your squad eliminate?" Riley checked his tactical display. 17 confirmed, sir. Maybe 25 total. "And how many did you capture or cause to retreat?" "Approximately 200, sir." The silence on the comm channel spoke volumes. In traditional galactic warfare, success was measured by enemy casualties. In human warfare, success was measured by objectives achieved. "Outstanding work, Sergeant. Prepare for your next assignment. It seems the rest of the galaxy is ready to learn how humans fight wars." The diplomatic crisis. The emergency session. Ambassador Viktor Petrov adjusted his tie and stepped into the Galactic Council chambers, knowing that the next hour would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. The circular chamber buzzed with agitated voices from dozens of species, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses that the universal translators struggled to process. At the center of the chamber, a massive holographic display showed the current state of the war against the Krell Empire. For the first time in 30 years, the red zones indicating Krell-controlled territory were shrinking instead of expanding. In just 3 months since implementing human military doctrine, the Galactic Defense Corps had reclaimed 17 star systems. "The session will come to order," announced High Counselor Meridian 7, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix. "We are here to address the concerning developments in our military operations." Victor took his seat at the human delegation's position, flanked by Dr. Patricia Huang and General Blake, who had been summoned to answer questions about their methods. Around them, the representatives of 47 different species radiated various forms of distress. The accusations begin. Counselor Thexare, representing the Zalani Federation, rose first. His blue-scaled form shimmered with indignation. "Honored colleagues, we must address the barbaric tactics being employed by these humans. The destruction of the Krell supply depot at Nexus 7 resulted in the deaths of over 3,000 non-combatants." A wave of concerned murmurs rippled through the chamber. Victor stood to respond. "Counselor Thexare, those 3,000 non-combatants were producing weapons and ammunition that would have been used to kill millions of your own people. We targeted a military facility that happened to employ civilian workers." "Semantics," declared Counselor Ivex Prime, her tentacles writhing with fury. "The Galactic Convention of Warfare explicitly prohibits attacks on civilian infrastructure." General Blake leaned forward. "The convention was written by species that had never faced genocidal enemies. The Krell have killed 2.3 billion civilians in 30 years. How many more should die while we debate the ethics of stopping them?" The moral paradox. Dr. Zenth Prime, who had been quiet during the previous military meetings, now spoke up from the medical delegation. "General Blake, I have reviewed the casualty reports from recent operations. Human-led forces have a 23% higher enemy casualty rate than traditional GDC units. And a 67% lower friendly casualty rate," Victor pointed out. "Our methods save the lives of your soldiers. But at what cost to galactic civilization?" challenged Counselor Brix 9, a hive mind representative. "We have maintained peace between species for over 4 centuries. Now you bring the methods of your primitive, war-torn world to our enlightened society." Victor's expression hardened. "Counselor, your enlightened society has been losing a war for 3 decades. Our primitive methods have reversed that trend in 3 months." High Counselor Meridian 7's crystalline form pulsed with controlled energy. "Ambassador Petrov, the concern is not with your effectiveness, but with the precedent you're setting. If we normalize these extreme tactics, what happens when the war is over?" The philosophical divide. Dr. Huang stood to address the chamber. "Honored counselors, I believe there's a fundamental misunderstanding here. You see war as an aberration, a temporary deviation from the natural order. Humans see war as a constant threat that requires constant vigilance." "Exactly our point," interjected Counselor Thexare, "you are a species defined by conflict. How can we trust you not to turn these methods against us?" "Because," Victor replied, "we understand the difference between enemies and allies. The Krell have made it clear they intend to exterminate or enslave every species in the galaxy. We made it clear we intend to stop them. The question is whether you want to win this war or maintain your moral purity while your civilizations burn." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some species defended the human approach, citing the recent military successes. Others demanded immediate restrictions on human tactics, fearing the precedent it would set. The data speaks. General Blake activated a holographic display showing comparative battle results. "Ladies, gentlemen, and various other entities, let me present some facts. In the past 3 months, GDC forces have destroyed 847 Krell vessels while losing only 203 of their own. The previous best quarterly ratio was 67 destroyed to 312 lost. How do you account for this improvement? Asked Counselor Vextau, genuinely curious. Simple. We stopped fighting the war the Krell wanted us to fight, and started fighting the war we could win. Blake highlighted several battle zones. Instead of meeting their fleets in open battle, we targeted their supply lines. Instead of defending every world, we abandoned indefensible positions and concentrated our forces where they could do the most damage. You abandoned entire colonies, accused Counselor Ivex Prime. We conducted strategic withdrawals that saved millions of lives, Victor corrected. The colonies you're referring to were already doomed. Our methods allowed us to evacuate the populations instead of watching them die in pointless last stands. The ultimatum. High Counselor Meridian, 7 pulsed with a deep, thoughtful blue. Ambassador Petrov, the Council is prepared to make a compromise. We will continue to employ human military advisors, but under strict oversight. Any operations that exceed approved parameters must be pre-authorized by this body. Victor exchanged glances with General Blake and Dr. Huang. I'm afraid that's unacceptable, High Counselor. The chamber fell silent. War doesn't wait for committee approval, Victor continued. Every minute you spend debating tactics is another minute the Krell use to prepare their defenses. Every committee meeting is another opportunity for intelligence to leak or for the enemy to adapt. Are you threatening to withdraw human support? Asked Counselor Thexare. I'm stating a fact, Victor replied. We can't fight effectively with one hand tied behind our backs. If the Council insists on micromanaging military operations, then the Council can continue losing this war without us. The moment of truth. The silence stretched for nearly a minute before High Counselor Meridian, 7 spoke again. Ambassador Petrov, what guarantees can you offer that human military methods won't be used against fellow galactic citizens? Victor stood, his voice carrying throughout the chamber. The same guarantee we've always offered, mutual respect and mutual benefit. Humans have no desire to conquer the galaxy. We have every desire to prevent the Krell from doing exactly that. But your methods, began Counselor Brix, 9. Our methods work, Victor interrupted. In 30 years, your methods reclaimed 0 systems from the Krell. In 3 months, our methods have reclaimed 17. The question isn't whether our methods are harsh. The question is whether you want to survive. Dr. Huang stepped forward. Honored counselors, humanity asks only for the chance to prove that victory is possible. If we succeed, your civilizations survive. If we fail, you're exactly where you were before we arrived. The vote. High Counselor Meridian, 7 consulted with the other senior council members before addressing the chamber. The council will vote on the human proposal. All in favor of granting full operational authority to human military advisors? The voting display showed the results in real time, 26 in favor, 21 opposed. The motion passes by a narrow margin, Meridian, 7 announced. Ambassador Petrov, your military commanders have our full authorization. May the cosmos forgive us if we're wrong. Victor bowed formally. High Counselor, you won't regret this decision. But the Krell certainly will. As the session adjourned, Victor could hear the worried conversations of various species representatives. They had just voted to unleash humanity's full military potential against the Krell Empire. The war was about to take a very different turn.